My name is Caroline Wood and I was turning 36. The party was at my parents' house in Memphis, their backyard buzzing with the voices of 50 guests. A chocolate cake sat on the table, white icing gleaming. My name scrolled across it in perfect script. My sister Victoria had baked it herself, her smile wide as she set it down. Everyone clapped, ready to dig in. Then my 10-year-old son grabbed my hand, his grip tight enough to hurt. He pulled me close, his face pale, his eyes wide with something I had never seen before. Fear. "Don't eat the cake, Mom," he whispered, his voice shaking. I froze, my heart suddenly pounding. His eyes darted to the cake, then back to me, pleading. My sister kept smiling, urging me to cut the first slice, her voice bright and cheerful. But Dylan's hand was trembling in mine, and I trusted him. My boy who never lied, who hated conflict, who would rather stay quiet than cause a scene. I nodded slowly, playing along, forcing a smile as I stepped back from the table. "I need a minute," I said, my voice light but my chest tight. Marcus, my husband, caught my eye, his brow furrowing in confusion. I gave him a small shake of my head, a silent signal to wait. Dylan stayed close, his small body pressed against my side like he was trying to shield me from something. I looked at the cake, its perfect icing, the candles waiting to be lit, and felt a chill crawl up my spine. Victoria was watching me now, her smile faltering just slightly. "Come on, Caroline," she said, her tone teasing but with an edge I recognized. "It is your birthday. Do not keep everyone waiting." My mother Patricia stepped forward, her hands clasped together, her voice warm but insistent. "Your sister worked so hard on this, sweetheart. Just cut the cake." I glanced at Dylan again, his eyes locked on mine, and made a decision. "I am not that hungry yet," I said, stepping away from the table. "Let us eat in a bit." The room went quiet for a moment, the guests exchanging looks, but then the chatter resumed. Marcus moved closer, his voice low. "What is going on?" I shook my head, not ready to explain. Not yet. Dylan tugged my hand, pulling me toward the hallway, away from the crowd. I followed him, my pulse racing, my mind spinning. He led me to a corner near the stairs, his phone clutched in his hand. "Mom, I heard something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You need to listen to this." He fumbled with his phone, his fingers shaky, and hit play. The recording was faint, but clear enough. Victoria's voice, sharp and hushed, talking to my mother in the kitchen earlier that morning. "This melatonin will knock them out till noon," she said. "Caroline will not make that meeting, and I will get the contract." My mother's voice followed, calm and matter-of-fact. "Just enough to make them sleep, honey. She has had her turn." I stared at the phone, my stomach twisting into a knot. Melatonin, the meeting, the developer contract. I had been preparing for weeks, staying up late, perfecting my pitch, building relationships with the clients. It was the biggest deal of my career, worth millions, and my sister knew it. Victoria was up for the same contract, but I was the frontrunner, and now she was trying to sabotage me, with my mother's help. "How did you get this?" I whispered, my voice tight. Dylan looked down, scuffing his sneakers against the floor. "I was in the kitchen this morning getting juice," he said. "I heard them talking, so I hid behind the pantry and recorded it." His voice was small, ashamed almost, like he thought he had done something wrong. I pulled him into a hug, my hands shaking. "You did good, Dylan. You did so good." He nodded against my shoulder, his body still tense. I straightened, my mind racing. Victoria had put melatonin in the cake. If Marcus, Dylan, and I ate it, we would sleep through the morning, miss the meeting, and she would swoop in to take the deal. My mother had known. She had helped. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, a sharp, cold ache settling in my chest. I had spent my whole life competing with Victoria, always coming in second in my mother's eyes. But this was different. This was not just favoritism, this was sabotage. Growing up in Memphis, I had always been the younger sister, chasing Victoria's shadow. She was 4 years older, the golden child who could do no wrong. When I won a spelling bee at 10, my mother barely clapped. When Victoria placed second in a dance recital, my mother threw her a party. I brought home straight A's, and my mother would say, "Your sister tried so hard this year." Tried. That word stung every time. By high school, I stopped trying to impress her. I focused on building my own life, got into real estate, and worked my way up to become the top seller at our firm. Victoria worked at the same company, and while she was good, she was not great. I could feel her resentment every time I closed a deal, every time a client chose me over her. Last month, we were both up for this developer contract, and I had been preparing relentlessly. Victoria had been quiet about it, too quiet. Now, standing in the hallway with Dylan's recording still echoing in my mind, I understood why. She had not been preparing. She had been plotting. I glanced back at the dining room where the party continued. Victoria was laughing with a cousin, her movements easy and relaxed. My mother was passing out plates, her smile warm and effortless. Marcus was talking to my father William, who looked tired and disengaged as always. No one suspected a thing. I pulled out my phone, my hands steady now, and texted Marcus. Do not let Dylan eat the cake. Do not eat it yourself. I will explain later. He glanced at his phone, his eyes finding mine across the room. He gave a small nod, his expression serious. I trusted him to keep Dylan safe while I figured out what to do next. Sophie, my coworker and closest friend, was near the punch bowl. She caught my gaze and raised an eyebrow, sensing something was off. I tilted my head toward the kitchen, and she excused herself, following me. What is wrong? She asked, her voice low. I showed her Dylan's phone, letting the recording play. Her eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, Caroline. Are you serious? I nodded, my jaw tight. She put melatonin in the cake. If we eat it, we miss the meeting tomorrow, and she gets the contract. Sophie's face hardened, her loyalty fierce. What are you going to do? I looked back at the dining room, at Victoria still playing the perfect sister, at my mother still playing the perfect host. I was done being the one who stayed quiet, who let things slide to keep the peace. Not this time. I am calling the police, I said, my voice steady. Sophie's eyes went wide, but she nodded. Do it. I stepped outside onto the porch, the cool evening air hitting my face. My finger hovered over the dial pad, my heart pounding. This was my sister, my mother, but they had crossed a line I could not ignore. I dialed 911, my voice calm as I spoke to the dispatcher. I am at a family party in Memphis, and I have reason to believe someone tampered with the food. I need officers here as soon as possible. I gave the address and hung up, my hands trembling now that the decision was made. There was no going back. I walked back inside, my face neutral, and rejoined the party. Dylan stayed close, his eyes flicking between me and the cake. Marcus caught my arm, his voice low. The police? I nodded. Trust me. Victoria called out from across the room, her voice bright. Come on, Caroline. Time to make a wish. I smiled, my heart cold. Soon, I said. Very soon. The knock came 15 minutes later, sharp and official, cutting through the buzz of conversation. I was near the kitchen, keeping an eye on Victoria, who was now refilling drinks and chatting with guests like nothing was wrong. My mother was beside her, laughing at something a cousin said, her hand resting on Victoria's shoulder. The perfect picture of family unity. I walked to the front door, my heart pounding but my face calm. 2 officers stood on the porch, their badges gleaming under the porch light. Evening, ma'am, the taller one said. We received a call about possible food tampering at this address. I nodded, stepping aside to let them in. Yes, that was me. Please come in. The room went silent as they entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. Marcus stood quickly, his eyes on me, confused but trusting. Sophie moved closer to Dylan, her hand resting protectively on his shoulder. My father William looked up from his chair, his face blank with confusion. Victoria froze, a glass of punch halfway to her mouth, her eyes darting to my mother. We need to speak with whoever made the food, the second officer said, pulling out a notepad. Specifically, the cake. Victoria's face went pale, but she forced a smile. I did, she said, her voice a little too high. It is just a chocolate cake. Nothing special. The first officer nodded, his expression neutral. We will need to take it for testing. Can you show us which one? Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she pointed to the dessert table. That one, the white icing. My mother stepped forward, her voice warm but tight. Officers, this is a family party. I am sure there has been some misunderstanding. My daughter baked that cake with love. There is nothing wrong with it. Her words were smooth, practiced, but I caught the slight tremor in her hands as she twisted her necklace. Before anyone could respond, Dylan stepped forward, his voice small but clear. I called you too. The room seemed to stop breathing. I stared at my son, my jaw dropping. He had called them? I had not known. I thought it was just my call. Dylan looked up at the officers, his face pale but determined. I heard something about the cake. It is not safe for my mom to eat it. The taller officer crouched down to Dylan's level, his voice gentle. Son, can you tell us what you heard? Dylan glanced at me, and I nodded, my throat tight. I heard my aunt and grandma talking this morning, he said, his voice shaking but steady. They said they put something in the cake to make my mom sleep. I got scared, so I recorded it on my phone. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's face crumpled, her hands flying to cover her mouth. My mother's eyes widened, her face draining of color. What? She said, her voice breaking. Dylan, honey, you must have misunderstood. The second officer straightened, his tone firm but calm. Ma'am, if the boy has a recording, we need to hear it. Dylan pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he navigated to the file. He hit play, and Victoria's voice filled the room, sharp and clear. This melatonin will knock them out till noon. Caroline will not make that meeting, and I will get the contract. My mother's voice followed, calm and complicit, just enough to make them sleep, honey. She has had her turn. The recording ended, and the room stayed silent. I watched Victoria's face as the weight of her own words sank in. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. My mother stood frozen, her mouth open, no words coming out. The officers exchanged a glance, then the taller one spoke. We are going to need to take that cake for testing. And we will need statements from both of you. Victoria's voice cracked. It was just melatonin. I did not mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted a fair shot at the contract. The second officer's expression did not change. Ma'am, tampering with food without consent is a serious matter. We will determine the next steps after the lab results come back. He moved to the dessert table, carefully placing the cake into an evidence bag. My mother's hand shot out, grabbing Victoria's arm. Do not say anything else, she hissed, her voice low but frantic. I stepped forward, my voice steady but cold. She already said enough. You both did. My mother's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hand dropping to her side. The officers asked a few more questions, taking notes as Victoria stammered through her answers. My mother stayed silent, her face pale, her hands twisting together. Marcus moved beside me, his hand finding mine. You okay? He whispered. I nodded, though my chest felt tight. Dylan stayed close to Sophie, his eyes wide, his small body tense. I am proud of you, I mouthed to him, and he gave me a small, shaky nod. My father finally spoke, his voice rough. What were you thinking, Victoria? She did not answer, her face buried in her hands. The officers finished their questions and turned to leave, the cake securely bagged. We will be in touch, Miss Wood, the taller one said to me. You did the right thing calling us. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. As they walked out, the room stayed frozen, no one moving, no one speaking. Then Victoria's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She glanced at it, her face crumpling further. Her hand shook as she set it down. Sophie broke the tension, her voice firm. Caroline, do you want us to stay? I shook my head. No. I think it is time for everyone to go home. The guests began to leave, murmuring quietly, their eyes avoiding mine. My father stood slowly, his face drawn, and walked out without a word. Victoria and my mother stayed, standing together near the couch, neither of them looking at me. I turned to Marcus and Dylan. Let us go home. Marcus nodded, his arm around Dylan's shoulders. As we walked to the door, my mother's voice stopped me. Caroline, please. We need to talk. I turned, my voice cold. No, not tonight. She took a step forward, her eyes pleading. It was not supposed to hurt anyone. It was just to give Victoria a chance. I stared at her, the woman who had raised me, who had always chosen my sister over me, and now she had helped her poison me. You chose her, I said, my voice breaking. Again, you always choose her. My mother's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks, but I did not stay to hear her response. I walked out, Marcus and Dylan beside me, and did not look back. 2 days later, the call came. I was at home, sitting at the kitchen table with Marcus, my coffee untouched and cold. Dylan was at school, and the house felt too quiet, the weight of what had happened still pressing down on me. My phone buzzed, and I saw the name. Officer Daniels. I answered, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. Miss Wood, this is Officer Daniels. We got the lab results back on the cake. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. And there was melatonin in it, a significant amount, enough to cause prolonged sleep, potentially dangerous if combined with other medications or conditions. We are moving forward with an investigation. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Thank you, officer. What happens next? We will need to interview your sister and mother again. Depending on their cooperation, charges may be filed. Tampering with food is a criminal offense, even if no one was harmed. I nodded, though he could not see me. I understand. He paused, then added, You did the right thing, Miss Wood. I hung up, my hands trembling. Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering mine. It is done, he said quietly. She admitted it. There is proof. You protected our family. I nodded, but the ache in my chest did not ease. My sister, my mother, they had done this, and now there would be consequences I could not undo. That evening, my mother called. I let it ring, staring at the screen until it went to voicemail. She called again an hour later, then a text. Caroline, please. We need to talk. I set the phone down, my jaw tight. Marcus watched me, his expression understanding. You do not have to answer. But the calls kept coming. My mother, then Victoria, then my mother again. By the third day, I could not ignore it anymore. I needed to hear what they had to say, if only to close this chapter. I called my mother back, my voice cold when she answered. What do you want? Her voice was shaky, desperate. Caroline, please come over. We need to talk. Just you. I hesitated, then agreed. Fine. Tomorrow. 1 hour. That is it. The next afternoon, I drove to my parents' house, the same place where the party had been just days ago. The yard was empty now, the decorations gone, the silence heavy. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she had not slept. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped inside, my arms crossed, my expression neutral. Victoria was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy from crying. She looked up when I entered, but I did not meet her gaze. My mother gestured to a chair, but I stayed standing. You have 1 hour, I said. Start talking. Victoria's voice broke as she began. Caroline, I am so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted the contract. I have been struggling, and I thought if I could just get this one deal, everything would turn around. I stared at her, my voice sharp. So you decided to drug me? Victoria flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. I panicked. I saw you preparing, and I knew I could not compete. Mom said it would just make you sleep, that it was harmless. I turned to my mother, my anger rising. You said it was harmless? You helped her poison my food? My mother's hands twisted together, her voice pleading. It was not poison, Caroline. It was melatonin, a sleep aid. I thought it would just give Victoria a fair chance. You have had so many opportunities. I wanted her to have this one. I laughed, bitter and cold. A fair chance? You do not drug someone for a fair chance. You work for it. You earn it. My mother's face crumpled. I know it was wrong, but you have always been so strong, so capable. Victoria has struggled, and I just wanted to help her. I shook my head, my voice low. You wanted to help her by sabotaging me, by risking my career, my family. Do you even understand what you did? Victoria stood, her voice desperate. Caroline, please. I will do anything to make this right. I will tell the clients what I did. I will withdraw from the contract. Just please, do not let this destroy our family. I met her gaze, my expression hard. You destroyed it, Victoria, not me. The moment you put that melatonin in the cake, you made your choice. She collapsed back onto the couch, her sobs filling the room. My mother stepped closer, her hand reaching for mine. I pulled back. Caroline, I am begging you. Do not let this ruin everything. We are family. I stared at her, the woman who had raised me, who had always chosen my sister over me. Family does not do this, I said, my voice breaking. Family does not plot against each other. You both made your choices. Now you live with them. I turned to leave, but my mother's voice stopped me. What about your father? He had nothing to do with this. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I know, but he stood by and let it happen. He always does. I walked out, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed through the empty house. I sat in my car for a long moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel, tears I had been holding back finally spilling over. Marcus called as I drove home. How did it go? Terrible, I said, my voice thick. But I said what I needed to say. When I got home, Dylan was at the kitchen table doing homework. He looked up, his face worried. Mom, are you okay? I knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug. I am now, I said. You were so brave, Dylan. You saved us. He hugged me back, his small arms tight around my neck. I love you, Mom. I love you too, buddy. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The police investigation was ongoing. Victoria and my mother would face consequences, though I did not know what yet. My relationship with them was shattered, maybe beyond repair. But as Marcus's arm wrapped around me, and I heard Dylan's soft breathing from his room down the hall, I knew I had made the right choice. My family, the one that mattered, was safe, and that was enough. 4 months later, I sat in my office overlooking downtown Memphis. The city stretched out beneath a clear autumn sky. The papers on my desk were neatly stacked, each one a piece of the developer contract I had fought so hard to keep. My boss, Mr. Harrison, stood across from me, a rare smile on his face. Caroline, the board is impressed, he said, extending his hand. We are promoting you to senior manager. Congratulations. I shook his hand, my grip firm, a quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. Thank you. I have worked hard for this. He nodded, his expression genuine. You have earned it. The contract closed smoothly, and the client specifically requested you for future projects. That speaks volumes. After he left, I sat back in my chair, letting the moment sink in. The meeting I had almost missed, the deal Victoria had tried to steal, it was mine. I had won it on my own merit, without sabotage, without shortcuts. Marcus had been my rock through it all. He had taken extra shifts at work so I could focus on preparing for the contract presentation. He had kept Dylan occupied when I needed quiet to review proposals. And when doubt crept in, when I wondered if cutting off my mother and sister was too harsh, he reminded me that protecting our family was not cruelty. It was survival. Dylan had his own way of showing support. He had drawn a picture of me standing on a podium with a trophy, the word winner scrolled across the top in his messy handwriting. I kept it taped to my desk, a reminder of why I had made the choices I did. Sophie had been there too, covering for me at work when I needed time to deal with the fallout, bringing coffee during late-night prep sessions, and never once questioning my decision to involve the police. Word about Victoria had spread through the real estate community faster than I expected. A colleague, Janet, had pulled me aside at a networking event 2 months ago. People are talking about your sister, she said, her voice low. Clients are backing out of her listings. Her firm is distancing themselves. I had nodded, unsurprised. Victoria's reputation was crumbling, not because I had spread the story, but because the truth had a way of getting out. A police investigation, even one that had not resulted in charges yet, was hard to hide in a small professional circle. Victoria had left the firm a month ago. I heard through the grapevine that she was working part-time at a home staging company, a far cry from the high-profile deals she used to chase. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only a dull ache for what might have been if she had chosen differently. My mother had tried to reach out repeatedly. Calls, texts, even a handwritten letter slipped under my door. Caroline, please. We need to talk. I miss you. Each attempt chipped away at my resolve, but I held firm. She had known about the melatonin. She had helped Victoria plan it. That was not something I could forgive easily, if ever. The police investigation had concluded 2 weeks ago. Officer Daniels had called to update me. We spoke with the district attorney, he said. Given that no one was harmed and your sister has no prior record, they are offering a diversion program. If she completes it, the charges will be dropped. What about my mother? I asked. She was complicit but not the primary actor. They are issuing her a warning but no formal charges. I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. Victoria would face consequences, but not the kind I thought she deserved. Still, her career was in ruins, and that was its own form of justice. My father had called once, his voice heavy with regret. I should have stopped them, he said. I should have said something, but I did not know what to say to him. His silence that night had hurt almost as much as their actions. One afternoon, as I reviewed a new client proposal, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, my stomach tightening when I saw the name. Victoria. Caroline, I know you do not want to hear from me, but I need you to know I am sorry. I am in therapy now, trying to understand why I did what I did. I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now. How wrong I was. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell her it was too late, that sorry was not enough. But another part, the part that still remembered us as kids, felt a pang of sadness. I set the phone down without replying. Maybe one day I would be ready to hear her apology, but not today. That evening, Marcus and I took Dylan out to celebrate my promotion. We went to his favorite pizza place, the one with the arcade games in the back. Dylan was grinning, his face smeared with sauce, as he recounted a story from school. Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "Proud of you," he said, his voice warm. I smiled, squeezing his hand. "I could not have done it without you." As we drove home, Dylan asleep in the back seat, I felt a sense of peace I had not known in months. The contract was mine, the promotion was mine, my family, the one that mattered, was safe and whole. Victoria and my mother were part of my past now, a chapter I had closed to protect my future. Sophie texted me later that night. "Heard about the promotion. Drinks this weekend to celebrate?" I smiled, typing back. "Absolutely. You have been there through all of this. I owe you." She responded with a smiley face. "You do not owe me anything. That is what friends do." I set my phone down, feeling grateful for the people who had stood by me, the ones who had not asked me to compromise, who had not questioned my choices, who had simply been there. The next morning, I walked into my new office, the nameplate on the door freshly engraved. Caroline Wood, Senior Manager. I set my bag down, took a seat, and looked out at the city. 4 months ago, I had stood in my parents' backyard, my son whispering a warning that saved us all. Now, I was here, stronger and more certain of who I was than I had ever been. Victoria's betrayal had tested me, but it had not broken me, and that, I realized, was the real victory. 8 months after that birthday party, I sat on the floor of our living room, watching Dylan arrange cardboard planets across the coffee table. His science project was due next week, and he had been working on it every evening, his focus intense for a 10-year-old. Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the house. Everything felt normal, steady, like we had finally found our footing again. Dylan looked up from his project, his brow furrowed. "Mom, why do not we see Grandma anymore?" The question came out of nowhere, simple but heavy. I set down the glue stick I had been holding, my chest tightening. I had known this conversation would come eventually, and I wanted to be honest without burdening him with more than he could handle. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes people we love make choices that hurt us," I said, my voice gentle. "Grandma and Aunt Victoria did something that broke my trust. I had to set a boundary to keep us safe." His eyes searched mine, curious but not scared. "Like a line they cannot cross?" he asked. I nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Exactly. It is about protecting what matters most. Our family. You, me, and Dad." Marcus walked in, leaning against the doorway, a dish towel in his hand. "You are teaching him the important stuff," he said, his tone warm but serious. I glanced at him, grateful for his steady presence through all of this. Dylan tilted his head, processing. "Like when I told you about the cake?" My chest tightened at the memory, but I kept my voice steady. "Yes, buddy. You were brave and honest. That is why we are here together, stronger because of it." I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "People might try to hurt you, even family," I said, "but you do not have to let them. You get to choose who you trust, and you always tell the truth, even when it is hard." Dylan nodded, his small hands fiddling with a wire from his project. "I get it," he said quietly. "It is like standing up for yourself." I smiled, proud of how much he understood. "Exactly." We went back to the project, gluing planets and laughing when Marcus accidentally knocked over a bottle of paint. But my mind lingered on the choice I had made. Cutting off my mother and Victoria had not been easy, but it had been necessary. My mother had sent another letter 2 weeks ago, her handwriting shaky, asking to meet for coffee. I had read it once, then tucked it into a drawer with the others. I was not ready. Maybe I never would be. Victoria had not reached out again after that one text months ago. I had heard through a colleague that she had moved to Nashville, taking a job at a small property management company. Her dreams of big deals and recognition were gone, replaced by the reality of starting over. I did not feel triumph hearing that, just a quiet sadness for what could have been if she had chosen differently. Sophie stopped by later that evening, bringing a stack of books for Dylan's project. You are raising a good kid, she said, watching him sort through the pages with focus. I nodded, my throat tight. He is learning what really matters. Family is not just about blood, it is about who shows up. Sophie squeezed my shoulder, her loyalty a steady anchor. And you showed up for him. That is what counts. My father had called again last week, his voice softer than I remembered. Caroline, I know I let you down, he said. I should have said something that night. I should have protected you. I had listened, my emotions tangled, unsure how to respond. I told him I needed more time, and he had not pushed. The truth was, I missed him. But trust, once broken, was not easily repaired. As Dylan packed up his project for the night, I watched him, my heart full. He was growing up, learning to navigate a world that was not always fair or kind. I had faced betrayal, set boundaries, and built a life with the people who truly mattered. Marcus came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. We are good, Caroline, he said, like he could read my thoughts. I leaned into him, feeling the truth of his words. We are more than good. That night, after Dylan was asleep, I sat on the couch with Marcus, a glass of wine in my hand. We talked about the future, about the house we were saving for, about Dylan's school, about the next project at work. There was no mention of my mother or Victoria, no shadow of their choices hanging over us. Just us, planning a life that was ours. I thought about the lesson I had learned, the one I was passing on to Dylan. Honesty had saved us. Setting boundaries had protected us. And choosing who to let into our lives, who to trust, was not selfish. It was survival. I did not know if my mother would ever truly understand what she had done, or if Victoria's apology would ever feel genuine, but that was not my burden to carry anymore. As I climbed into bed that night, Marcus already asleep beside me, I felt a peace I had not known before. The past 8 months had been hard, filled with grief and anger and doubt, but I had come through it stronger, clearer about who I was and what I valued. My family, the one I had chosen and protected, was safe, and that was enough. I closed my eyes, thinking about Dylan's question earlier. Why do not we see Grandma anymore? The answer was simple, even if the reality was not. Because some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. Some boundaries once set have to stay firm. And some people, no matter how much you love them, have to be left behind so you can move forward. I had made my choice, and I would not look back. That's Caroline's story. A 6-year-old mother whose own sister tried to poison her birthday cake to steal a career opportunity, whose 10-year-old son became a hero by secretly recording the plot and calling 911, who made the hardest choice to cut off her mother and sister to protect her family. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our community come together over stories like this. Real question. If you were Caroline, would you have forgiven your mother and sister after 8 months? Or would you have kept the boundary like she did? Tell me what you would have done. I am genuinely curious whether family loyalty has limits. Hit that like button if this story gave you chills. Share it if you have ever had a family member sabotage you out of jealousy or competition. And subscribe for more true stories about children who saved their parents, family betrayal, and the courage it takes to set boundaries even when it hurts. One last thing. Have you ever had a sibling who was the golden child while you were overlooked? Someone your parents always favored no matter what you accomplished? Share your story in the comments. This is a safe space. And here's the most important question. Do you think Dylan was too young to be put in that position? Or was his bravery exactly what saved his family? Drop a comment with your honest thoughts, because sometimes the smallest voices speak the loudest truth. Thanks for watching. Remember, protecting your family is not about keeping everyone together. Sometimes it is about knowing when to walk away. See you in the next one.